I would like you to join me in welcoming Nafez Aldakkak from Managing Partner Anara Impact Capital. And we have also joining him on a panelist, Waleed Balla, Managing Partner at Sukna Venture, and also Mohammed Ebrahim Hassan, a Chief Scientist at Mozn. They're going to discuss with you today the MENA AI frontier, a deep dive into regional opportunities, investments, and everything else in between. Please join me in welcoming them, and please pay attention. Thank you.
I'm Nafez Aldakkak, Managing Partner at Anara, and today our panel aims to unpack the potential of AI in our region. And as Newton said on the 5th of February 1675, he could see farther because he was able to stand on the shoulders of giants. Today, we are very lucky to have two giants of industry and investment with us here today. Ustad Waleed Balla, Managing Partner at Sukna Ventures, and Dr. Mohammed Ebrahim, Chief Scientist at Mozn, who will help us chart this path for AI in the region. We're going to try to touch on four topics today, or four, let's say, pillars of discussion. First, dig into, what is the global opportunity in AI? Where is value being created? Then try to think about where can MENA win? What is MENA's edge in all of this? And then from there, talk about the constraints, challenges, and bottlenecks before hopefully we end with some concrete examples of how we're delivering real value here today. To start with you, Ustaz Waleed, as an investor, from an investor's perspective, where is AI creating durable value globally? And which of those do you think translate to our context in MENA?
Amazing. Assalamu alaikum. Masakum bukhair jami'an wa hayakum Allah. It's really great to be here. So I'm like everyone else, I'm pretty excited about AI and what it can do. We're all noticing that the super cycle and CapEx investments. Last year, there were more than $300 billion spent on data centers and other infrastructure for AI. This year, we expect it to go up to probably 500, 650. And there's no stopping of the kind of investments getting into this space. Having said that, the game is still in early innings. This is what is very exciting for me. LLMs haven't yet been, noted the final winner. There are lots of new technologies coming in, new paradigms, new use cases. So we're very early into this game. And in fact, for MENA, I think there's a great opportunity to leapfrog in many aspects what's happening already in more developed markets, whether it's the US, China, or elsewhere. So one area that I'm really interested in, if we're talking about leapfrogging, is this idea of what are the second-order effects of AI that we could beat everyone else to. Automation is the clear case, right? Everyone today is thinking about automation. There's one worker in the organization that is doing a certain job. An AI agent can do 80%, 90% of that job, and you do raise the efficiency of the workflow. That's low-hanging fruit. That's not really VC for me. This is something that doesn't change fundamentally how work is done. But if you think about the second-order effects, this is where things get really interesting. And I'll give you an example. So when you think about the problem of coordination between different teams, it's very hard to actually get everyone on the same page and in sync, because lots of the communication and the interfacing that is happening between them is through unstructured communication. It's not a structured API. We're not machine-to-machine kind of communication. Now, with the abilities that LLM provide, I can suddenly fill in the gaps in communication with that kind of unstructured modality that is happening, and improve not just the efficiency, but the effectiveness of the way the organization is working. And this is at the very essence of digital transformation. It's a very old word. It's overused phrase, but it's very key to opening up new opportunities. It's not the digital part, it's the transformation part. And a lot of the failures that are happening today in applying AI are not really because of AI. It's just that you're trying to apply AI to an old paradigm that already expired. It's an old organization. The structure of that organization, the workflow itself, needs to be fundamentally transformed. And AI is just an excuse to review that and look at what kind of constraints that were there before, like I mentioned with the coordination problem, that aren't there anymore, and they can solve them. The other part, I think, is, think about the physical world. If we think one step or two steps ahead, we're noticing today there's lots of investment in the physical AI, embodied AI, world models, robotics. I think there's a big opportunity there to have that digital transformation extend into the rest of the sectors that haven't seen the advantage of productivity gains that we've seen in the banking sector or enterprise or other places as well. The third one, I think, is about sovereignty. I used to work in the semiconductor space a long time ago, and when you mention chips, I would never think about geopolitics. It's a very geeky kind of topic, but today, when you mention chips, it's about sovereignty. It's about independence. We see what's happening all over the world, and we all remember when we needed NVIDIA chips and we couldn't get them for a long time. So solving sovereignty issues for MENA, that's, I think, a big opportunity where the international players are probably not going to be able to, or even have the incentives, or even if they have the incentives, they don't have the trust required to build on it. So those are maybe are a few ideas where I see the opportunity for MENA in AI.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mohammed, from your work with enterprises, where do you see AI, delivering real operational impact today? Apart from pilots or proofs of concept, where is it really doing work or heavy lifting today?
Right. I want to pretext my answer to that question by saying that I think we went about AI in the inverse order that we should have went about. We went about AI from the technology to the institutional effects and then to the socioeconomic impacts. The reason why I think we should have went about AI in the reverse order, where we start from the from the socioeconomic values and constructs that we have, moving down to the institutional, and then finally the technology is, I think AI today has the affordances. Excuse me, I need to silence this. I forgot to silence it. I think AI today has the affordances to dismantle our institutions and destabilize our societies and economies. And I said affordances. It doesn't have to be this case. And by affordance, just to make it clear, I mean for any system or device, its affordances is basically the grammar that that require or facilitate certain engagements, while at the same time dissuades or constrain other sets of engagements. And by institution, when I said AI has the affordance to dismantle our civic institutions, I meant by institution, I mean not a specific organization per se, but actually the commonly circulating set of norms and values that cover and govern a recognizable human action, be it education, medicine, or law. Now, the current, if we leave AI to its own devices today, its affordances will have the following impacts on our institutions, per the definition of an institution that I have furnished. AI is going to undermine experience. AI is going to short-circuit decision-making. And finally, it's going to isolate humans even more than social media has. At the socioeconomic level, either locally, regionally, or even globally, if those affordances manage to trickle down with the current pathological pathways between technology and institutions, they're going to trickle down to the socioeconomic impact, negative impacts, which are at the top. You have widening the gap of inequality. You have unprecedented rates of job displacements that we haven't thought about carefully. And finally, we have the collapse of human intellect. I'm sure you've heard the word, excuse my language, it's a word with books that have been published with that name, enshittification of the human intellect. And that, in my opinion, is the largest threat that we have as humanity today if we leave AI to its own devices? Going back to Nafez's question, which we will dwell down in this panel on, how can we create value in the enterprise with AI as it stands today that is clear, measurable, but before anything else, positive? I think the only way we can do that is to block those pathological pathways between the current affordances of AI and their impact on the institution. And it doesn't have to be big. Every one of us can start by thinking about where he or she can actually introduce those high walls that block those pathological affordances of AI as it stands today, because changing what AI can or cannot do today in the enterprise is not easy, but every road starts with a step, and we will talk about these steps later on in this panel.
Thank you so much. To shift back maybe from an investor standpoint before we start unleashing the affordances, says Waleed, when you look at early stage founders in MENA today, which AI startups you feel are truly native to the context, are harder to replicate, are solving for maybe MENA or emerging markets, and which are not, or like what are their characteristics that you feel are important?
I think the answer is, to be honest, is no one knows. And that's what's so great about market dynamics. You want to see thousands upon thousands of experiments happening all together in parallel. And the market will filter out the bad ideas, and the good ideas and the great teams will, at the end of the day, will win. And that's the basic idea behind VC investing, right? That's the portfolio kind of paradigm. Having said that, I know what I don't want to invest in. And that's something that is very clear. If it's not adding value to the market, if it's not transforming the way we work or live, then it's not disruptive enough where I'd like to make the risk and also take on the illiquidity that comes with supporting that company. Having also experienced previous cycles of technology, history tells us usually that trying to compete head-to-head with the incumbents using the same rules of the game, the same paradigm, is very futile. And typically you want to see a team that is very dynamic and listening to the market, listening to the results from the experimentation that they're doing in this market, and adjusting appropriately. So besides the technology part, I think there's a mindset. And, Steve Jobs is well known for one saying, which is, his view of, he took it from someone else, but basically that the computer is the bicycle of the mind. So if the computer is the bicycle of the mind, what is AI? I remain very optimistic about what AI can do. I believe we live in a non-linear world. This behavior is going to be emergent. And we will see bad effects of AI, but we also see very great impacts of AI. But it requires a different kind of mindset than what used to be there before. We can't use the same rule or the same paradigm to think about AI going forward. And having this kind of youth present here today, that's a great thing, because science, they say, usually advances one death at a time. It's very hard to unlearn something, but when you're young, it's easier to think about the new stuff. So I would go back to the second-order effect of new technologies like AI. I mentioned coordination, but let's talk about the core idea, which is intelligence. Let's assume that intelligence now is almost free. What does that mean for a business? It means something else is becoming scarce. So if intelligence is very low cost, judgment and taste is very scarce. It still requires humans. The kind of wisdom that we have is still not something that technology can actually capture. How do we benefit from doing that in terms of building new businesses? Also, realizing what actually kind of constraints were there on the way we live and work and behave. Those constraints that are now broken because of an old assumption that we thought, was a given, but that assumption is now no longer correct. Who can identify those old constraints that are implied and we can't see them today, and we just treat it as if it's something that is already granted. And I think that's a journey, because you can't start out that journey knowing the solution beforehand. The great solutions, they require you to go through, there's many names of it, but it's like a maze. And you have to be willing to go through that maze and learn and evolve what you're building until you find the right solution. And in fact, one of the bets we made, we invested in a startup, and we had a discussion with the founder and said, listen, we don't know what the perfect AI company looks like. Are you willing to go out there and explore? Well, I don't need you to show me a financial forecast or a business model or a product. I'm investing in the person, in the capabilities, and the mindset required to go out and explore. And at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for as VCs, as someone who can have a good starting point, but doesn't stop there. They take that starting point as an advantage, and then they move on and explore. And that's the history of technology. I really recommend anyone who deals with disruptive technology to look at history. The Greeks, when writing became popular, it was really something that was causing controversy, believe it or not. A lot of the Greek philosophers thought that writing is bad for the mind. Suddenly, you're not going to memorize things. What's going to happen? This is going to be the end of civilization. Of course, it wasn't. And there's lots of books written, and even Twitter accounts, the Pessimistic Archive, for example. You can look at it, and they'll tell you what happened when books became popular, when the bicycle became popular, when the airplane became popular. In fact, even when the internet became popular. I still remember my mom, every day she sees me on a computer, not going out and doing things, and Allah ilan al-computer, it's normal, right? So it's very normal for us to have this bad reaction and only think about the downside of technology, not thinking about the complexity, non-linearity of the world that we live in. And in fact, do you consider, and I think this goes back to, do you consider us as an advanced civilization today or not? Any definition of civilization, we're still, centuries away from, being an advanced civilization. Whether you think about the way we generate energy, or even a small virus like corona, an influenza that kept 8 billion people in their houses. If you ask me, that's not a civilized world yet. So there's a tremendous, huge amount of work that still needs to be done. And if you have that mindset that I want to go out there and do it, I think that's going to be just amazing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Says Waleed. Dr. Mohammed, move away from the characteristics of founders in MENA to maybe the characteristics of companies in MENA that you work with, maybe at Mozn. Are there characteristics of MENA enterprises that make them more suitable to AI adoption in your kind of work? Which companies has this worked for? Which has it not worked for, and why?
Right. At the three levels that I have started this session with, the technological, the institutional, and then the socioeconomic, I don't think that there are any technological inherently differentiating factors between an enterprise in MENA and an enterprise elsewhere. I think the differences exist at the other levels, and I will just take one of the affordances of AI that I spoke about in the first question and see how, if not handled properly, could actually have a negative impact on how we scale AI in MENA. I mentioned that AI has the affordance of undermining expertise in the enterprise, and this happens when you have when AI starts looking good enough to actually replace human judgment. There's an immediate financial pressure on the institution to replace humans with AI. And that usually happens at the lower end of the skill level, at least for now. We'll see what happens in a couple of years. So why we should be looking at this in MENA with a different lens than we look at it elsewhere, either in the US or in China or in other economies where AI has made a headway? Because of two reasons. One of them is the distribution of the skill level within an enterprise. If you look at least within our company or within the organizations that we work with, it's always leaning towards the lower end, where you find so many entry-level, medium-level skilled workers and employees, more than you find highly skilled ones. That's the first. The second is the rate at which the skill is generated within such amazing edifices like KAUST or elsewhere, and the rate at which we can, as an economy, advance the skill from entry to mid and to advanced. The rate here is lower than in the US or Western Europe or even China. Why? Because of the opportunities that you get as an employer at Google or at Microsoft or in any advanced, or even at, if you go to the industry side at BMW or at BASF or any industrial organization, the rate at which the skill grows is higher than here. So when you look at how AI undermines expertise by displacing human judgment to AI, it becomes even more pronounced given the two tenets of our skill set in terms of the ratio and the rate of advancement. So we need, you mentioned how we can actually, how MENA is different than the rest of the world in terms of for example, regulations that we need for AI. So I think that we need regulations that where the pace of displacement, which is inevitable, nobody's disputing that, matches the other organic inherent rates of skill generation and growth within MENA.
Amazing. Dr. Mohammed, actually, we'll stay with you for a second, because you've been touching on this idea of the societal change and the impacts. Can you maybe take us on that journey from a bottlenecks and maybe just change and rupture perspective? What are the most pressing societal and organizational challenges posed by AI, whether that's employment, hiring? What do you foresee happening?
I'm not following. I didn't hear that.
So when you talked about all the affordances that are coming from AI, we talked a bit about what are the changes that we can expect as a society? What do we need to think about in terms of challenges for employment, hiring, automation, all of that?
I think not particularly to MENA. You mean in general, right? I think the first front at which we will see AI impacting our institutions is going to be this undermining of expertise. And the second, which I want to dwell on a little bit, is how decision-making is short-circuited. If you take how AI decisions are made today with the required accuracy, you have to go with deep learning. If you want the effectiveness and the accuracy of prediction and generation, you will go to a black box. And that black box, no matter how XAI is advancing these days, explainable AI, is inherently non-interpretable. There's a difference between interpretability and explainability. And the lack of advanced research and development in orthogonal approaches to AI, orthogonal to deep learning and generative AI and LLMs, with notable exceptions, of course. There are labs that I take pride of having been part of at some point in time that have consistently dismissed the single recipe approach to AI. But if we, the lack of explainability and the lack of being able to function in a human-friendly way within the enterprise is going to have a lot of destructive effects on the organizations and on the enterprises. If you cannot argue with the decision, if you cannot reason with the decision, if you cannot go back and forth, and COT is not what I mean by going back and forth with the AI. If you cannot ground your decisions as an AI in evidence and be able to defend in a non-sycophantic way with no acquiescence in the middle, the introduction of AI is going to dismantle our civic institutions by removing the hierarchy of argument, the hierarchy of discovery and exploration when it comes to decision making. We have been trying to apply AI in mission-critical applications here in Saudi for a long time. I mean, my company, the company that I work for. And the biggest challenge we see is the lack of trust in the decision made by the AI and the lack of being able to defend that decision when the time comes. And unless we fix those, I think that the rate at which the deployment of AI within mission-critical domains will remain very slow.
Thank you. So Waleed, going back to you and this whole idea of, what mission-critical elements are missing from the ecosystem. When you think about maybe the ML AI ecosystem in MENA, what gaps do you think still exist that could limit our sort of upside or outcomes for you as an investor hoping to, back ML AI companies in MENA that have the application or potential to go global?
Well, if I think about what we're missing, the first thing I think is we have the neurons, but we don't have the synapses. Lots of brains. We have the brain power, but that brain power is not connected. And that's why I love events like these, where people with shared interests come together and get to know each other, and collaboration is activated. I've seen firsthand how these communities actually can transform an ecosystem. I remember when I got into the VC space in Saudi, this was like in 2016, all of Saudi Arabia got only $5 million in VC. That was the second time it went lower. Before that was 15, and before that was 45. And everyone at the time, when I was entering the ecosystem, everyone's telling me, well, what are you doing? Everyone is exiting. Innovation is not, this environment is not hospitable to innovation. But I was seeing something else different. I was seeing communities like Riyadh Geeks and others actually coming together, very excited. Everyone is building. And a lot of the people in Riyadh Geeks today, they are the builders of the well-known names like Mazen al-Dharrab and Zed, Jihad Ammar now in Kohir, but he did Qayyim, Mashhur al-Bayan, and others. And I continued building, or participating in the building of other communities like VCP Association and others. And just last year, we ended the year with $1.72 billion in VC investment. It's a big number, but I think we can go even higher, up to 10 billion at least. And there's lots of work to do. But I think the community component is something that we are missing very badly. Lately, a Jordanian company opened. They got a noticeable funding round. What is notable about Open was it started out as an open source project. And then they closed that project and decided that they actually can turn this into a commercial opportunity. I would love to see more of that. Why can't we actually build projects that everyone in the world would like to be utilizing? So community is one part. I also agree with Dr. Mohammed regarding the operational talent. So I think we invested pretty fairly in the scientific part. Yeah, we need more people definitely, but we have lots of smart brains. But the go-to market, the transformation, the operation, Those are very important parts of the organization to actually function, and would love to see how we can attract that talent into the space. And I think the third one is just imagination. Imagine what can be done. What I talked about, there's lots of work that still needs to be done. I really believe that, and it just needs someone to open it out. You don't have to think about the future. Actually, we're not magicians. We're not, consultants. We're scientists and engineers. But sometimes you need to open your eye and see the present clearer than the way you're seeing it today. And if you can do that, lots of opportunities will show up. I was talking with someone previously about, one phenomena that is noticeable in the market is every value chain has a choke point, at least one choke point or two. And these choke points are really important to that sector or market. Anyone who can actually commoditize or resolve that choke point actually creates a huge opportunity to transform the market. So if intelligence becomes cheap, one choke point that I can see is trust. Who will solve the trust issue? So this trust problem. I know OpenAI is not going to solve it. Sorry, OpenAI. But it needs someone to think about, trust, because now we're becoming very intimate in our relationship with these systems and very dependent on them. You mentioned mission critical. Also, that's an issue. So I think these are some of the issues that we need to think about in MENA, and I think they're solvable. But it requires a system-level kind of outlook to what can be done, and inshallah, it's very doable.
Inshallah. And if I can just push you on that last sort of part to combine it with what you said before, this kind of mindset shift. You have a lot of really bright and incredible audience, and you talk about, they need to sort of imagine better, think more about sort of learning. And you also talked about this a bit in one of your recent appearances on one of the podcasts. What are the kind of key 3 components of a founder that you're looking for? Like if anybody here was going to start a business, what attributes do you want them to try to kind of embody, dig deeper into?
Well, every founder is different. We invest in outliers. That's our work VCs, right? So we invest in the exception. But for every founder, you have to have at least 2 attributes mentioned in the Quran. Qawi al-Amin. You have to be high integrity, and you have to have high competency. So if you're not competent and you're not high integrity, then you're already rolled out. Everything else is going to be different. Lots of different personalities can win the market. And this is why we like to engage with communities as investors, because it gives us enough time, ample time, to get to know the founder and not judge them on the external kind of attributes that they have, but actually build a genuine relationship with them, understand what they're trying to do, their outlook for the world, and what they want to change about that world, so that when the time for financing comes, we're ready as well. And we don't want to judge a book by its cover, and those relationships become very valuable. So we call it in Sukna, we call it the pre-work, trying to extend outwards and build those relationships very early on, sometimes even before the founder decides they want to become a founder, and try to understand their personality, where they're good at. Sometimes, as a founder, your profile might be specific to a given problem. So if you try to apply it to a different problem, it doesn't work. And we call that the founder market fit. And that's why I said it's sometimes a journey. Sometimes you might have the right problem in mind, but probably you're not the right person to solve it. And we're willing to back that kind of exploration, but we prefer that it happens very early on, before even you need the financing.
Amazing. Dr. Mohammed, if I can close with you and push you to try to be optimistic. So if we were able to deal with the affordances or some of the challenges, where do you think we can get to? And not very far, like in the next 5 to 10 years, with AI, what would be an optimistic sort of short-term outcome for you?
I think 5 years is still a long time for prediction in AI, as many of the audiences, if not everyone, can attest to. But if I were to look with an optimistic lens on the upcoming 5 years. I would think that we can be on a positive path to aligning progress with prosperity, if and only if we do not leave AI to its own devices. And by that, I mean we avoid the regulatory capture that is taking place everywhere in the world right now. If we can, as a society, as a community, as scientists both in the academic sphere and in the industrial sphere, have a voice in what should AI, not just what should AI, but how should AI be doing one function versus the other, and not just submit to the current tsunami of, I would say, one and one only optimization objectives, which is shareholders maximization. We can see a positive future where AI actually contributes to the growth rather than being a death sentence to our civic institutions, where AI could actually create prosperity rather than widening the inequality gap, because every single path that is autonomous from where we are right now to where we could be in the upcoming few years is not short of dystopian, to be honest. I know you asked for optimism, and I'll get there. But before we just paint a rosy picture of AI is, as I heard today from Elon Musk and others, we are heading to a future where work is unnecessary and wealth is abundant and nobody has to work anymore because AI is doing all the work. There is no causal pathway from where we are today to that. And if there were, it would have been articulated by those who claim that this is the future of AI. I think, practically, today, we as scientists and technologists and investors, if we can solve one simple problem that puts us on an optimistic pathway with AI, we have made a difference, and we have made a value of this sitting, inshallah. We need to solve the dichotomy between measuring in the lab and performing in the field. Today, we've all read the press that AI passes the bar exam, AI is better than, is at PhD level in medicine or in any other discipline. These claims need to be verified before we actually work according to them, either as policymakers or as investors or even as scientists. Because these are very, very big claims that do not stand the test of evidence-based validation. And here I point to some recent great work that was a collaboration between MIT, Cornell Tech, and Stanford, where they put up a framework, a three-step framework, to going from measurement to, actually the name of the paper is Measurement to Meaning, where you do not just test something in the lab and assume that it will actually work in the field as per the tests you did in the lab. Even passing the Olympiad math tests with flying colors doesn't mean that AI can do math the way prominent mathematicians actually do it. We at Mozn sometimes are faced with unbelievable expectations on the enterprise side. People think that we can have an e-judge today. People think that we can plan our macroeconomy with AI without any human intervention. These are the effects of the bold claims that are made based on testing on a benchmark in the lab, and then extrapolating extravagantly from those results on those benchmarks to the expectations of working in the field. So if we work together as scientists and as decision makers in the enterprise today in understanding how we measure the capacity of AI and understanding what it can and what it cannot do, this by itself is the true first step towards the optimistic future of AI.
Thank you, Doctor. We have about, I'd say, 10 minutes for questions. I will emphasize the definition of a question is something that ends with a question mark. So if there are any short questions, and then we can have a quick rapid-fire answers before we head out.
Hi, thank you all for your insights. Is anyone going first? Or?
You can go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, MIT last summer put out a report that 95% of AI pilots are failing. And, you know, it's a questionable insight, but one of the things that they mentioned is that part of the reason some vertical solutions are not making customizable or context-based solutions. So they're making assumptions about the workflow that some people are finding it's okay if I find a foundational model that's a bit more hands-on than using these vertical solutions. So I was wondering, as a person in VC for Mr. Waleed, how do you pinpoint if a solution is going to be successful or not, other than the fact that people who are working on it are smart?
Great question. And this goes back to what I mentioned about digital transformation. And what we're noticing today, that a lot of these AI companies that are addressing the enterprise market, for example, they have what's called now a forward engineer, right? Someone who actually works inside. And the reason you want someone to be embedded within the organization is there's lots of change management that needs to happen. Otherwise, no amount of new technology will be helpful if we're trying to just bolt it on top of the old paradigm, the old workflows, the old mindsets. It has to be transformed from within. And that's why you need embedded people to work there with the team and have the capability of actually convincing the organization, even though they are coming in as quote-unquote technical people, they actually can convince them that, no, you need to rethink the basic business needs of why this workflow looks the way it is, why the structure, organizational structure, is. I used to work at an eGov company called Ilm before the days of AI, and we had some of the best technology people. Hats off to Rial, I think he's here. We did amazing things with technology, but without the change management part, without going to the government employee and convincing them that we need to rethink the business architecture itself so that, you know, when we apply technology, we get the results that we want, then it's useless. So one of the things that we did, for example, in Ilm is, change the view of what a citizen is. The citizen is not just someone who is asking you to approve paperwork. They're actually a customer of yours. At the time, that was hearsay. But now it's everyone, using their phone and getting everything online, thinking nothing about it. So I think that part of change management transformation is very important for the team. And that's one thing that we judge the team by. Are they just doing R&D? Because that's not a business. Or can they actually change the world around them and have views on doing it? I think Mozn did a great job as well with Focal, for example. I think that's a great case study where they even go to customers who, some of the biggest banks in the region, and these banks have all the money you can think of, they have the talent, they have the tools, and yet they're not seeing the results. So what you guys did was very smart, which is, let's do a managed version of the service, of the product for you. We'll manage it and we'll provide you with outcomes. And that resulted in great results and made Mozn one of the leading companies in AI in the region. So back to your question, R&D and tech is important, but you also need to think about the transformation part, and the team needs to have that appetite to do the change themselves.
والله شكلك جاوبت سؤالين في واحد لأن تفضل.
Hello. Thank you for the insights. My question is for Dr. Mohammed. You said that you don't see the causality between being abundant with the advancement of AI now, but seeing the advancement of humanoid robots and the reasoning of LLM, I'm not saying that in 5 years we're going to achieve that, but if we combine humanoid robots and LLM that reasons, wouldn't that in 10 years make cheaper labor that are robots instead of humans, or no?
Actually, you mentioned humanoid robots and that even adds levels of complexity that LLMs have the luxury of not even having to think about. Safety, ethics, emotional engagement, all these things that, in my opinion, are still long in the making, those specific aspects that I mentioned of what's known as AGI. I still don't see a clear path from where we are today. Advancing humanoids in terms of dexterity and agility and being able to do physical actions that they are currently not, I think this is an advancement path that is clear and we will see a lot of advancement in that. But advancing those humanoids to function safely and ethically and emotionally when embedded within a human society is still an open question. And I don't know how that will be solved, if ever.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question to Waleed. So I'm curious to know, like when you said a statement, I just wanted to clarify it, if you could, please. So you said if we are going to have an abundance of intelligence, then we're going to have a shortage of something else. And I didn't understand this part because it's not a zero-sum system, right? Abundance does not necessarily imply a shortage in something else. So could you please clarify this? Yeah.
It could be a philosophical view. Maybe I'm not underwriting this. But basically, let's think of a simpler example. When ride-sharing business model came to be, right? There was lots of scarcity both on the demand and supply side. You had to have a medallion or a certain license, which is very hard to get to operate a taxi. And a lot of people on the supply side didn't want to get taxis. It wasn't for them. So the market remained at a certain size and never grew. What happened is when Uber and Lyft and others, and Careem, of course, they solved the demand and supply bottleneck. They had to solve the next layer of scarcity, which is trust. Because I'm not going to allow anyone to ride my car who I can't trust, right? It's a stranger. Why would they ride my car? And as a rider, I'm not going to ride any car if I don't have a third party that guarantees me this one has been vetted and I can trust riding it. When Dr. Mohammed mentioned explainability and how do we rely on these systems to actually function the way they're supposed to, I think that's where the scarcity now is moving, right? So the intelligence is there. I can do something that I wasn't able to do. So now I move to the next level of scarcity, which is this, verification, validation, trust, whatever you want to call it. You have to solve that now because intelligence became a commodity. Whereas before, when it wasn't a commodity, maybe even the use case was not viable, so I never had to think about it.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're saying the bottleneck has shifted from AI, from intelligence to something else, but it's not scarcity.
Yes, that would be a better expression of it.
Thank you so much, Ustad Waleed, Dr. Mohammed. I firmly believe, good events, good panels are ones that leave you with better questions. And I'm very confident that today people have better questions than they came with. Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody for being so patient and sitting up front. I think it makes a big difference for the energy of the panel.